good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and remember, Context is Everything Media Network founder and CEO John Michael is reading a textbook, cover to cover. Today, we're talking about the one, the French, Napoleon. The age of Napoleon begins. The age of Napoleon begins. Yesterday we talked about Robespierre and how he got guillotined because he was guillotining too many people. And the point was they wanted to guillotine less people, so they cut his head off. Two wrongs make a right. The age of Napoleon begins, setting the scene. He was like an expert chess player with the human race for an opponent, which he had proposed to checkmate. Thus did Madame Germaine de Staël, a celebrated writer and intellectual, describe Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon himself expressed a more humble view of his rise to power. "Nothing has been simpler than my elevation," he once observed. "It is owing to a particularities of the time." From 1799 to 1815, Napoleon would dominate France and Europe, a hero to some, an evil force to others. He gave his name to the final phase of the revolution, the age of Napoleon. Napoleon's rise to power. Heading, hence the sunglasses. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in Corsica, a French-ruled island in the Mediterranean. His family were minor nobles, but had little money. At the age of 9, he was sent to France to be trained for military career. When the revolution broke out, he was an ambitious 20-year-old lieutenant, eager to make a name for himself. Napoleon favored the Jacobins, the Republican rule. However, he found the conflicting ideas and personalities of the French Revolution confusing. He wrote to his brother in 1793, "Since one must take sides, one might as well choose the side of the victorious, the side which devastates, loots, and burns." Early successes. During the turmoil of the revolution, Napoleon rose quickly in the army. In December 1793, he drove British forces out of the French port of Toulon. He then went on to win several dazzling victories against the Austrians, capturing most of the northern Italy, forcing the Habsburg Emperor to make peace. I thought the Habsburg Emperor was in Spain. What the heck? They're everywhere. Habsburg jaw, look it up. Disturbing, inbreeding, not good. Hoping to disrupt British trade in India, he led a colorful expedition to Egypt in 1798. The Egyptian campaign proved to be disastrous, but Napoleon managed to hide stories of the worst losses from his admirers in France. Successes fueled his ambition. By 1799, he moved from victorious general to political leader. That year, he helped overthrow the weak Directory and set up a 3-man governing board known as the Consulate. Another constitution was drawn up, but Napoleon soon took the title of First Consul. In 1802, he had himself named Consul for life. A self-made emperor. 2 years later, Napoleon had acquired enough power to assume the title Emperor of France. Emperor of the French. He invited the Pope to preside over his coronation in Paris. During the ceremony, however, Napoleon took the crown from the Pope's hands and placed it on his own head. By this action, Napoleon meant to show that he owed his throne to no one but himself. He owed the crown to no one but himself. At each step on the rise to power, Napoleon had held the plebiscite, or ballot, in which voters said yes or no. Each time, the French strongly supported him. To understand why, we must look at his policies. France under Napoleon. New heading, hence the glasses. During the Consulate and Empire, Napoleon consolidated his power by strengthening the central government. Order, security, and efficiency replaced liberty, equality, and fraternity as the slogans of the new regime. Reforms. To restore economic prosperity, Napoleon controlled prices, encouraged new industry, and built roads and canals. To ensure well-trained officials and military officers, he set up a system of public schools under strict government control. At the same time, Napoleon backed off from some of its revolutionary social reforms. He made peace with the Catholic Church in the Concordat of 1801. The Concordat kept the church under state control, but recognized religious freedom for Catholics. Revolutionaries who opposed the church denounced the agreement, but Catholics welcomed it. Napoleon won support across the line. He encouraged émigrés to return, provided that they took an oath of loyalty. Émigrés left, hence the sound émigré, leaving, immigrating. They left because of they wanted the monarchy to stay, and the monarchy wasn't. The monarchy was going down, and so they said, I gotta get out of here before I get my head chopped off, which was quite likely, given Robespierre's policy and imminent doom. Where was I? Peasants were relieved when he being Napoleon, reorganized their rights to land that they had bought from the church and nobles during the revolution. The middle class, who had benefited most from the revolution, approved Napoleon's economic reforms and the restoration of order after years of chaos. Napoleon, who made jobs open to all talent, a popular policy among those who remembered the old aristocratic monopoly of power. Napoleonic Code. Among Napoleon's most lasting reforms was the new law code, popularly called the Napoleonic Code. It embodied Enlightenment principles such as the equality of all citizens before the law, religious toleration, and advancement based on merit. But the Napoleonic Code undid some reforms of the French Revolution. Women, for example, lost their newly gained rights and could not exercise the rights of citizenship. Male heads of households regained complete authority over their wives and children. Again, Napoleon valued order and authority over individual rights. New heading. Building an empire. In 1804 to 1814, Napoleon furthered his reputation on the battlefield. He successfully faced down the combined forces of the greatest European powers. He took great risks and even suffered huge losses. I grew up on the battlefield, he once said, and a man such as I am cares little for life of millions of men. By 1810, his grand empire reached its greatest extent. Let me read that quote again, because that is bizarre. I'll read it in English this time. I grew up on the battlefield, and a man such as I am cares little for the life of a million men. As a military leader, Napoleon valued rapid movement and made effective use of his large armies. He developed a new plan for each battle, so opposing generals could never anticipate what he would do next. His enemies paid tribute to the leadership. Napoleon's presence on the battlefield, said one, was worth 40,000 troops. 40,000 people died in the revolution. I don't know why that number showed up again, but coincidence is coincidence. The Grand Empire. As Napoleon created a vast French empire, he redrew the map of Europe. He annexed and added outright some areas to France, including the Netherlands, Belgium, and other parts of Italy and Germany. He also abolished the tottering Holy Roman Empire and created a 38-member confederation of the Rhine, capital R-H-I-N-E, under French protection. He cut Prussian territory in half, turning part of the old Poland into the Grand Duchy of Warsaw. Napoleon controlled much of Europe through forceful diplomacy. One tactic was to put friends and relatives on the thrones of Europe. For example, after unseating the King of Spain, he placed his own brother, Joseph Bonaparte, on the throne. He also forced alliances on European powers from Madrid to Moscow at various times. The rulers of Austria, Prussia, and Russia reluctantly signed treaties with the Corsican upstart Napoleon, as his enemies called him. In France, Napoleon's successes boosted the spirit of nationalism. Great victory parades filled the streets of Paris with cheering crowds, and people celebrated the glory and the grandeur of Napoleon. France versus Britain. Britain alone remained outside Napoleon's European empire. Only with a small army, Britain relied on its sea power to stop Napoleon's drive to rule the continent. In 1805, Napoleon prepared to invade England, but at the Battle of Trafalgar, fought off southwest coast of Spain, British Admiral Horatio Nelson smashed a French fleet. With an invasion ruled out, Napoleon struck at Britain's lifeblood, its commerce. He waged economic warfare through continental system, which closed Europeans' ports to Britain goods. Britain responded with its own blockade of European ports. A blockade involves shutting off ports to keep people or supplies from moving in or out. During their long struggle, both Britain and France seized natural ships suspected of trading with other side. British attacks on American ships sparked anger in the United States and eventually triggered the War of 1812. And in the end, Napoleon's continental system failed to bring Britain to its knees. Although British exports declined, its powerful navy kept open vital trade routes to the Americas and India. Meanwhile, trade restrictions created a scarcity of goods in Europe, sent prices soaring, and intensified resentment against French power. I hope you have a good day. God bless. Goodbye.